Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Oh, nice. Okay. Testing 1 2 3. Cool. Then I can. Testing 1 2 3. Oh, nice. Okay. Testing 1 2 3. Cool. Then I can. Okay. I just thought while I'm sitting here editing for a while, I might as well just stream it. And when I was 1 2 3. College, I used to stream a lot of my composition sessions. Like, testing 1 2 3. Sometimes really long sessions, like 8 hours at a time, of editing music and stuff like that. Okay. And I just thought while I'm sitting here editing for a while, I might as well just stream it. Thinking through ideas for this, and actually, hold on, I think I need to. When I was 1 2 3. Yeah, I gotta mute it. Okay. After spending a year, like, brainstorming ideas for this project, I finally kind of got a balance on the types of environments and stuff, and basically I'm gonna try and balance these sort of small, like kind of closed, even somewhat like claustrophobic type environments. One part of the game will be in the city, so it'll be inside buildings and all around the city streets and stuff like that. So it'll be a lot of kind of like closed spaces. And the characters that are playing through that route, they don't have to like build stats as much, so the scenes, the gameplay will be more just like purely action and room escapes and puzzles and things like that, whereas then the other part of the game will be these like huge forest maps. So like, here's a forest map. It's really not that big. Like, I mean, it takes 20 seconds or something to run from the top to the bottom, and not much time at all from side to side. And then I was thinking, if the point of the game is to be like battling things in the forest, it would be smart to make these huge maps. And I'll show you my inspiration for it. This thing, I always feel like it's gonna be doing something weird. See, like, it's not capturing the desktop. Will it capture this? I think I need to set this to capture the display. I'm gonna delete this. Display capture. Yeah. This. Size this correctly. This should just capture the display. There we go. So here's a bunch of the inspiration for the maps for this game. So in Sonora, this paved road with the double yellow line at the bottom is one of the main roads that goes up into the foothills. And then this road that comes off of it is a road that I spent a lot of time on growing up and hanging out with Gunner and stuff. And it's a really long road. So from each of these pictures, we're going like the bottom of the picture, or the top of the picture will be the bottom of the picture in the next one. So like here's this area up here, and then this is following the road as it extends up a little bit, and you can see that there's just like all these like houses and driveways and paths and trees and like barns, and I don't know what some of these things are, like warehouses and just big dirt lots. Like here, we'll go up north or west a little ways, and where is it? Here's the last picture in this set. So like here's a bunch of like water and stuff like that, like these weird kind of like murky ponds and whatnot. And somewhere in here, this one, there's like big empty lots with all kinds of like dirt roads snaking around, and there's like cars parked out there, and like, I mean, I can't imagine what some of this stuff is. It's just like sheds and shacks and shanties, and here's like the entrance to the road, and it's very like chill, like residential forested road. But anyway, there's just like so much stuff out there, and Sonora is kind of known for having like a meth problem, and lots of meth users and meth addicts and people manufacturing meth and all kinds of stuff like that. And so I thought in this game I'll kind of stick to what I know, which is sort of like this, I mean, not what I know like really well, like super familiar with, but kind of the underbelly of Sonora in a way. I grew up around a lot, and then like, because it's, I mean, in that town, you drive through the street and see a really, how can I put this like prejudicely? You just see some really like shady characters all around that town, and I really found a lot of inspiration in that for not making exactly like villains, but almost just like people. Well, yeah, villains, but then also just kind of like some people who have a lot of problems, who, when placed into a survival situation, that their lives would become even more chaotic. So like if their lives already are chaotic, then expanding on that with the zombies and stuff. And I'm going to try to do, be really careful to not, I want to show people realistically and it's not just a setup to make a gimmick or a caricature out of them, like, but to actually show these kind of like real life, like exciting events that might happen, like that could be potentially like very dangerous and stuff. So these pictures, I'm gonna basically just start modeling the game after these maps. So I'm gonna start making the maps from here, and I'm just gonna extend it off into the foothills really far. There'll be these giant forest maps, but they max out at 256. So like, well, here to get an idea, so make a couple of trails. Oops. Like this. Like this. One of these allows the player to dash. Shoot. Or actually, maybe I don't need that. So set the starting point. Okay. And now let's get an idea of how long it takes to run across this map. Jeez. This map really will it'd be pretty big. So here's like, you can see just running around the house takes a little bit of time. So if I go off this way and find this trail, okay, and let the stamina bar fill back up. Okay, so start running. Okay, so it took a little while. Okay, so now I'm going to make this thing that's going to zoom out the camera. The 2 is the amount of zoom, and the 1 is how long it takes to reach the zoom. So it's going to do that in one frame. And then it needs to, like, then it needs to switch off. There we go. Okay. So now let's see what this looks like. So you can see here, this won't work with the lighting effects because the lighting effects is just a square over the top of the screen. When you zoom out, the square will be gone or in the wrong spot. Nice. And this is what I was hoping would happen, is that to run from one side of the map to the other basically requires all the stamina bar. There we go. Now with the map sizes this big, it'll really... I want the players to have to wander around in the forest and get lost. And then there'd just be danger, like, everywhere. And randomly. Like, the game's just gonna load random dangerous things. Just anywhere, basically. Like, they'll play the game and they'll think, okay, well, I walked over here into this forest and I got attacked by, whatever. And so I gotta be careful about that. And maybe some things in the game will stay the same from time to time. But then other things in the game will be very random. And I'm gonna try to make it fair. Like let's say you wander up on a house and unfortunately the game loads a bunch of enemies randomly at that time. Let's say you don't have like the right tools to get away from those enemies. The game can balance the challenge. Like let's say your only way to escape a bunch of like wild dogs is to use the habanero tincture or something like that, but you don't have any more. So maybe the game would consider that and make it so that if you just run from the dogs as far as you can, just run from them. And if you can manage to avoid all the obstacles and run for the entire stamina bar time, then maybe the game will be kind and just make the dogs stop chasing at that time or something like that. And then the puzzles will be a lot based on the environment. So like you have to collect things from the forest that you can use. You have to figure out how to get in and out and around buildings and how to hide and well, very much like survival, like a big open world survival. One of the main challenges is going to be, well, actually it might not be that challenging, but to get the enemies to chase the character across maps. I've figured it out a lot yet, but I haven't figured out how to it'll probably have to use timers and variables, things like that, because I could figure out every detail, but the part where, let's say there's enemies chasing and the player, like, let me show here. If there's enemies chasing and they go to the side of the screen and the player runs off the edge of the screen, it's pretty easy to make the enemies chase the player like back onto the other screen. But the difficult part would be like the enemies moving on the other map, like while stuff is happening, and like if the player runs off the map and back onto it, the zombies should be a little bit closer to the edge of the screen. But I don't know how to do that yet. So maybe could make it a rule that if you run off the edge of the screen, you can't run back onto it. Like the player would just say something like, "Oh, it's too dangerous," or something like that. Or just try to set up the fights in a way where they stay on one map at a time. There might be a plugin here that can spawn events. Let's see. This might be a way to do it. So like this could potentially spawn the enemies onto the map. Let's see. Wonder what this thing did. So this could be really useful to just randomly spawn enemies like onto a map. I think probably what I'll do, unless I can think of something better, is I'll make it so that if you run off the edge of the screen while enemies are chasing, you can't run back on to the other screen until the enemies have arrived on your screen. So let's put it this way. Run off the edge of the screen here. The enemies are chasing. And let's say then arrive on the edge of the screen here. So the game's going to start a timer where it's going to calculate how far those enemies were from the edge of the screen, and then it's going to make each one wait a certain amount of time and then load it onto the screen. Now, fortunately, the health data will stay the same because the health of the enemy is stored as a variable, and it stays the same no matter what screen they're on. And so if you try to run back onto the other screen before the enemies load, it'll say, no, it's too dangerous to go back there. And then if the enemies do load onto the screen, then you can turn around and just run right back. So we'll see how it works. Then the next thing is just deciding what events to have happen and stuff like that. The way that I'm pacing the game for now is that Gunnar is kind of guiding us through the forest, and he thinks he knows specific houses that we can go to. And so for a little while in the game at least, Gunnar is kind of leading the path, and if you try to wander away too far, he'll say, no, don't wander away too far. But then at some point, it will just turn into a open world map, and you can wander all areas of Elizabeth Lane. I have all sorts of ideas for stuff to have happen, all sorts of ideas, but excuse me. So now the next thing I have to do is pretty much consider what are the most important objects in the game. The main goal is always to just be finding food, storing food, finding water, medicine, supplies, and stockpiling it as much as possible, which means more or less breaking into buildings, gathering stuff up, and then trying to carry it back to Gunnar's house or anywhere that you can store it, possibly temporarily. My students are always saying to me, oh, you should make it where you can build stuff. They're really into the idea of Minecraft and Roblox and building forts and stuff. They love this idea of building forts. So if I can get around to it, maybe it'll be possible to use Gunnar's house as a sanctuary. Get chased back to it. You can hide out in the house and stuff. And the characters can all be just intermixed. So I wanted to make to use real life characters. I like the feeling of I like exploring a character that's in the real world, but also now kind of transforming and revealing itself in a fictional world. And I know I just need to start creating tons of maps. It would be smart to, put some rock ridges around the outside of this map so that it's kind of closed off on a lot of sides and stuff. And literally just fill it with forest. Because I'm not kidding. If you have map after map like this, and it's just forests and roads and houses, and you can hide little shacks and little stuff all over the place, and have events generated randomly, I swear it'll make the game really cool. There won't be a lot of games like it, but I did think that it kind of reminded me of this. One sec. lot of these plugins are free. I think I might buy this plugin pack, because each of these costs like $1, but probably be pretty useful. But yeah, some of these, like that one's free. Oh wow, no, actually it costs $1. Well, I downloaded it from something else, it was free. Like Event Chase Player. Yeah, like this one's free. And yeah, all these are pretty useful. But anyway, I'll figure that out when I get to it, if I need to buy some plugins or not. But what I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of, is this. What is this? Okay. And so here it's like, these regions are big and open, some more than others, but there are also a lot of boundaries and a lot of pathways and things that make it where you have to like kind of solve a maze to get through and stuff. And there's a light world and a dark world. But this is kind of more or less what I picture for my game. Like the road starts down at the bottom and it just goes up through the forest. And there's all these areas that are either accessible or maybe not accessible, depending on like getting items, unlocking pathways, and stuff like that. And you see in this game, each of the items allows to like fight enemies in a certain way, and also to explore areas in certain ways. Oof. What's this? If, you know, some of the things that like bombs, for example, were used a lot in that game to go through walls. In the zombie game, it'd probably be more like a sledgehammer or something. You could bust through a door. All sorts of things. I've written down a lot of things, but I just wanted to get all this stuff set in my mind before I start editing, because it's just gonna, it's actually gonna be really fun, but it's gonna be like many hours of editing, and I'm like starting a day job soon, so I'm not gonna be able to edit on and stay up late on Tuesday or Wednesday night anymore. Just have to do it on the other days. I was gonna do a lot of creative stuff this Sunday and Monday, but that new season of Better Call Saul, I just ended up watching the entire thing, and Let's see what this one is. The full bundle. You know, I could make maps just using the editor window. Like, if I copy pasted this, it could be a map. So yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff, but the plugins aren't the main part yet. It's more about the gameplay, and then eventually setting the mood with a lot of music and all sorts of stuff. And I find that I can get things done really fast, but it's a lot more efficient if I just do like what I'm doing now and just kind of outline what I need to do. So I think maybe the next thing to do is just like make a list of gameplay, like items and stuff, and what the sort of like what some of the beginning quests will be, what the monster battles will be like, boss battles, stuff like that. In Resident Evil, you can play the full game practically without fighting anything. Only just like a few monsters have to be fought. So it's not so important that the battle system is like super, like fine-tuned. I don't think there's gonna be experience points and stuff like that. But yeah, let's see. Well, I made this little thing of like music ideas here, things that I want to include in the music for the game. Just trying to think. Do I want to start doing a bunch of editing maps tonight? I almost kind of just want to try to go to sleep early or something. I wish there was a way to pause the live stream. Well, I'm gonna stop it for now, and then I'll start a new one if I start editing.